Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Metaphysical Egypt. I'm Allan Peoples with Patricia Awion Lehman. Our website is horusrising.com, and this is the first part of a new series on the ancient magnetic equator and the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, hi Alan. Well, I'm really excited to get started with this one. We've talked a little bit about the magnetic equator in an earlier episode, but now we're bringing in the concept of how it connects with the Ark of the Covenant. And then we're going to take it even further and deeper into some pretty interesting um, concepts that have a huge impact on what's happening with us today. But let's go ahead and get started. I brought this back because we had shown an image that wasn't head on like this. This is looking up at the ceiling in the Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Zaytun here in Cairo. We had seen just a part of this image, and I thought it was so cool to look at all of this. This is,
And of course, she has her hands in the Ka position.
Yes, exactly, which is what? The life force. So it's the life force of the primordial waters. We're looking at the heavens, and we have the 12 windows that are representing the 12, basically the signs of the zodiac,
the ecliptic.
The ecliptic, exactly. And what we couldn't see before is we see Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I have them circled in red, representing our four seasons, right? The four directions, the four fixed signs of the zodiac.
Right.
So it's amazing how this symbolism, this ancient symbolism, gets pulled in, to our iconography, and our symbolism throughout all different kinds of mythology and dogma. And I like too that she's also been called the Queen of Heaven, which is a title that was given to Isis and other female netters. So again, this is important. The Queen of the Heavens, the primordial waters that gives birth to what? Life force. And the duality, the Shu and Tefnut, is the life force, electromagnetism. I even kind of look at these two cherubim in the top. Do you see them? Well, they're angels, of course. But, maybe they're the cherubim of, the Ark of the Covenant, the life force. And we're going to get into this. So we're going to do a little review as well. And so we've talked a lot about this moment when heaven meets earth, right? Or the portal between heaven and earth. But what does it mean when we say heaven meets earth? You could liken it to the concepts of the Ba, the spirit, and the Ka, the life force, combining to form the Ak, which is the light body. And I have this beautiful image on the left that sort of shows you what it's like to be in the center of that electromagnetic field, right? And it's that feeling, that moment of at-one-ment, atonement. We talked about atonement, at-one-ment with all that is. This quote is beautiful. Each human being is the dwelling place of an infinite power, which is the root of the universe. Is that the Ark of the Covenant, right? That dwells within us. And here's another beautiful quote. All things material and spiritual originate from one source and are related as if they were one family. The past, the present, and future are all combined or contained in the life force. The universe emerged and developed from one source, and we evolved through an optimal process of unification and harmonization. So we bring ourselves back to that feeling of oneness with harmonic resonance. Which speaks so loudly about sound and sound being creation, but also the sound that brings us back to that oneness, the creator, which is who? Which is the heart of everything that is, which exists within us, and of which we are a part of. So
is that the center point of our torus field?
Exactly. That's where I'm headed. You already know how I think. We've been doing this too long now.
Which is interesting because it's in the shape of an apple.
Of course. We're getting there too. But yeah, again, we've been talking a lot about the Ark of the Covenant, but what did we say it was? The power of God on earth, right? That's what we're told it holds. And so in a way, it's the sacred womb that carried the divine spark and portal between heaven and earth, right? The mercy seat, the power of God, where God was channeled to the high priests. The life force again between heaven and earth, life force, Ka, the birthing and rebirthing box. Cycles within cycles within cycles. And it carries what? The manna or seeds of life, the manna from heaven as the seeds of life. The sprouting rod of Aaron, which also speaks to what? Growth, right? Flowering of life. And the laws. We'll talk about what the laws might be. The duality that drives expansion and contraction. We've talked about that. And what is the magnetic field? It's something that expands and contracts, right?
Mm-hmm.
From dual opposing wave spin. So basically, it's a creative force of nature. Netters. It's why we use netters to describe it. And it holds the mercy seat, right? Or God's throne. And this is a picture. I know we've had this in our podcast before, but this is the image picture I took when we were together at the Met in October 2020. And I have the placard here that was next to it, and it calls it God's throne, supported by two striding lions from the Ptolemaic period. And it says, lions form the sides and legs of this throne, and the god He, who represents thousands of years, and what we've come to know represents eternal cycles, constitutes the chair struts in the rear. The seat and base have fittings for a separate statuette of a seated god, right? Who must have had royal associations given, the lions bearing the throne. So here you have, I'm starting to make the connection between lions and the power of God on earth. And of course, we know they carry the throne, and we've talked about this, and it's always moving. This image you see at the bottom is of a lion, and he's basically on the current, right? And it's the hieroglyph N, which is water or currency, right? Lion on the currency. We've seen images of that before. And we've seen this several times, but I'm probably going to show it several more because it's so important. What were the cherubim? The cherubim as the veil, the magnetic field, right? It's Isis and Nebhet with their wings. It's their wings around the earth, around Osiris, us, the land, we, each one of us around the earth and around, the sun, around it's the magnetic field that surrounds anything spinning. And this image on the right of Horus and Thoth, consciousness, and they're doing the purification ceremony with the two waters, negative and positive charge, right? Dual opposing wave spin. Ankhs, meaning water, life, energy, life force. It's the magnetic field, right? Purification through a resonant magnetic field. Here's a great image of another birthing box. We'll see so many. It's like a priest, and he's sitting as a cube. And if you can see, there's a shrine with Osiris in the center, and he's going through the purification ceremony. The shrine, the container, right? The container, the womb that holds us in a three-dimensional perception of reality, is an electromagnetic field. There's another purification ceremony with Ankhs, and they represent the two waters, positive and negative charge. So, I'm just bringing back and reminding us this concept of these electromagnetic fields that surround us as life force, as atmosphere. We've seen this image, and I went ahead and put the heart inside it. Just again, a reminder that it's always spinning. Movement is not linear. It's always moving, and it's spinning and turning. And this is an image of birth and rebirth. Expansion and compression, light and sound. Gravity multiplies and balances light and sound. What is gravity but attraction back to center, right?
Exactly.
Opening and closing spirals constitute the heartbeat of the universe. This is all from Walter Russell. And we've seen these images before too. The image on the right is the Mehen game, and it's a serpent spiraling into center. And the game pieces are lions. And this is so important. They're the ones that are riding the currents, right? On the game board, that is our perception of reality. From the pyramid texts, it tells the story of Wanis, the cannibal hymn. This is so cool. I was just in the pyramid of Wanis a couple of days ago and was talking about the cannibal texts, and it tells the story of Unis, right? Who slays and eats the powers of the pantheon. Oh my gosh, everybody says they call it the cannibal text because he's eating the gods, right? Well, what does that actually mean? What are the gods but Neteru, forces of nature? So as power of powers, he transcends every divinity of creation and is the eldest of the old. He is a Neter who, as a divine cannibal, metaphorically eats Neteru and gulps down their spirits. Wow, right? Well, what is he doing but eating his way back to center, the heart of knowing, gnosis, right? All the forces of nature contained within the center. On the far right here is the ceiling. I took this picture at the Badami caves in India. And again, spiraling back to center and then exploding, with you can see the Naga servants exploding. This one in the center is called the Mehen game, and you can see it's the exact image of Walter Russell's laws of inhalation, exhalation of the breath of life, right? That's it. That's the secret to everything. We've talked about this before, but this has everything to do with the Ark of the Covenant and the ancient magnetic equator. And so from the Kybalion, the further the creation is from center, the more it is bound, right? The nearer the center it reaches, the nearer free it is. So freedom is found in being centered, right? That's how we eliminate the chaos, right? Is we find that still spot in our center. That's again why we meditate. The further we get from our source, our heart, the further we get from our knowing, and we become bound by a belief that we are our bodies. Separation consciousness. We've seen this before. It's the same expression. Creating the universe appears from the one and disappears into the one. The great breath of life. God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. The saying holds for God, the anima mundi, and for the soul of man. It can't be any other way. This is it.
We saw this 2 episodes ago with the churning of the Milky Ocean.
Exactly. That's what I mean. All of these things, there's so much that speaks to this, and as you see these images here over and over, if you're staying with us in these episodes, you'll begin to see them everywhere in your life, in dogma, mythology, and symbolism everywhere you look.
And it's not just in ancient Egypt, it's in all ancient cultures, and it is carried on today. We see it in advertising and logos.
Exactly.
People in the know are using this ancient sacred knowledge for purposes perhaps it wasn't intended.
Well, and sometimes, what I realize is, I'll see a lot of these mythologies and these symbols and flow of what we talk about within storylines of movies and shows. I see it in artwork. It's in artwork everywhere. And I wonder sometimes that it's not embedded in our consciousness because it is the breath of life. And that when we create, when we're in that groove, when we're in, we're tuned in, as you would say, to that life force, we create in its patterns. So yeah, sometimes used for the maybe all the wrong reasons, but sometimes it just comes out because we're in the flow, and that's how we create and speak and talk and write.
Good point.
and create. Now, I want to remind everybody, I'm just going to show this one. We asked, at one point, there's this two metal balls, and they're rolling down these two different paths, and one is a straight path, and one is a curvy path. And we've said nothing is linear, right? And we asked, which one do you think will get back faster? And as you can see, the answer was, it's the one with the curvy path. It's this, I call it serpent power, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the point was to watch for the pause, because within this breath, there is a pause at the height and the nadir of every every part of the sine wave, right? At the top and the bottom of the sine wave path or serpent. Or when you're talking about the breath, the pause occurs at the point where you breathe all the way in, there's a pause. And then when you breathe out again, the furthest that you breathe out, there's a pause. And that's part of the great yogic breath. Those pauses are important, because when we talk about the ancient magnetic equator, we're talking about its existence happening at a pause, at a moment of nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right, before the next creation. And I point this out that we see this again in our dogma, that, there's 3 moments of silence before the resurrection when Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. And then we see this again in the Egyptian mythology, of the mythology of Sekhmet, which we've talked about. Sekhmet passes out for 3 days before she awakens to see Ptah. And together they give birth to Nefertum to initiate a new age of a heart-centered consciousness. I like to include that because it's so cool. Sekhmet is that raging goddess, right? And she, Ra, there's 2 eyes of Ra, and there's Hathor, the nurturing eye, and Sekhmet, the raging, fierce eye of Ra. And when Ra sees that the earth is out of Ma'at, he takes his eye that becomes Sekhmet, and he throws it down on the earth, and she scourges the earth. And he's so concerned that she'll destroy everything, that he turns the Nile into wine, or barley beer, if you will, and different tellings of the story. And she passes out for 3 days, and again, that's the pause. And that's the pause, like we've talked before, at noon and at midnight, at the solstices, and at the great year, there is also a pause before we breathe out into another cycle. One would be separation consciousness, and one would be unity consciousness. And here we're looking at Nefertum representing unity, heart-centered consciousness. And this picture of Nefertum on the left, he's a beautiful lioness. And you can see he's holding the eye, which is consciousness itself, at his heart, right? Heart-centered consciousness.
And if you look at the lotus on the top of his head,
yes,
it looks like the top of a Taurus field.
Well, it does, doesn't it? And the lotus represents the sun again. It's the sun. It's giving birth to a new cycle of the sun, S-O-N-S-U-N. You see it as Horus in a way here, but Nefertum is known to be the lotus. You'll usually just see the lotus on his crown. So he is that lotus aspect. And then we find, I've talked a little bit about the Heb Sed rituals, and we will go into great depth about them, but I'm introducing them now because they also hold so much symbolism about everything that we're going to discuss as far as the cycles that we've been discussing, but also the ancient magnetic equator and what it means. And so they had these rituals, the Heb Sed festivals, were celebrated when the king, supposedly, this was the idea, the intention from the writings, says that they were to celebrate it at their 30th year of reign. And this is reflecting the cycle of, the kingdom becoming old and tired, They speak about, that this linear time where we start out, ready to go and excited. And then as we go through time, we get tired, we get old. And so when the kingdom gets old, it needs to be rejuvenated. And so the ceremony or the ritual was, and again, in this case, we're talking about the cycles that we just discussed, this moving into a state of separation consciousness, right? And so the way they're looking at this is as the kingdom gets older, we move into separation and war and turmoil and chaos. So the king must celebrate this ritual, his jubilee, if you will, that are still celebrated today, which we've talked about. That is basically symbolically saying he's going to unite the two hemispheres of his brain. He's going to find that oneness, that wholeness, that atonement, that at one atonement within himself, so that he can bring that into his kingdom, into his rulership. And so here we see the first image, as you see, he's going to unite both Upper and Lower Egypt, again, symbolically representing the two hemispheres of the brain. And then he is going to be crowned. We see a coronation scene of Hatshepsut on the right, crowned with the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. So as he's being crowned, and he's being crowned as a Horus king, or a god on earth. And this is where we get the concept of, that the ancient pharaohs were, the propaganda was that they were gods. They were living gods on earth. It all comes from these ceremonies. And they're named Horus gods, which is really incredibly important. And part of the rituals that they do is, one of them is running a labyrinth to reunite these two lands. And they run the labyrinth with an apis bull. And the apis bull, a huge symbolism there, and I'm not going to go into the details. A very specific, special bull that has all this symbolism. Under his tongue, a scarab; on his back, an image of a vulture's wing. His tail has split hairs. All these different symbols, like a white triangle on his on between his ears, on the top, on his brow, basically. All these special things showing that the apis bull was special from the heavens, and the king would run with the bull along this labyrinth, and just sort of like what I was showing you before, this moving into center and coming back again, but it's through the two markers for Upper and Lower Egypt. And so I'm going to read this. It's written by Sama M. Arab, and it's the Sed festival, or Heb Sed, the renewal of the king's reign. So the king, and bear with me, but it's such a cool description of what happened. The king was then attired a short kilt with a bull's tail on its back. And that shows he's proud to be the bull of his mother, which is the heavens, right? And so this is according to Hakim, by the way, which probably gave the festival a less formal name. It was known as the Feast of the Tail, and also connected with Wepawat, which is the white wolf that looks like Anubis, the yin and yang of the path
opener.
Yes, exactly. So in the open space between the two rows of shrines, the king ran a ritual race alongside the apis bull 4 times as the ruler of Lower Egypt, wearing the red crown, and 4 times as that of Upper Egypt, wearing the white crown. The course was bounded by 2 points, symbolizing the borders of Egypt, to reinforce his dominion over the whole kingdom. And at the same time, he dedicates it to the gods. In doing so, he proved that he was still physically able to rule the country, and was thus rejuvenated and reborn. Finally, he was carried into a procession to visit the chapels of the gods. He was carried first as king of Lower Egypt by the great ones of Upper and Lower Egypt to the chapel of Horus, where he receives the crook and flail. Next, as king of Upper Egypt, he was carried to the 2 chapels of Horus of Edfu and Seth of Ambos, where he was handed a bow and arrow, which he then shoots. He shoots an arrow in each one of the 4 directions, which I find absolutely fascinating. So yes, as you can see, they did all of these things as a symbolic ritual to speak to the cycles
Now,
of.
you four times as the king of Lower Egypt, four times as the king of Upper Egypt. A couple of episodes ago, we saw on the wall of Kamumbo the
I knew you were
the
going there.
lion with the four heads to the left, and the lion with the same
That's
lion with
it.
four heads to the left and four heads to the right.
That's it.
And didn't
That's
you
it.
say they said the sun rose four times in the east and rose four times in the west?
You beat me to it. That's
So,
exactly it, right? And so the earth itself, according to Herodotus, the high priest told him that the sun actually rose, as you said, four times in the east, four times in the west, meaning that the magnetics had totally flipped, but also that the earth had spinned in the opposite direction, right? So four times in one direction, four times in the other direction. Think about the two hemispheres of your brain, the two hemispheres of the earth. All of this is all related. This is the cycles even of the universe. That if we don't spin both ways, how can we transmute our polarity and come back to center?
hmm.
So they're running this race to emulate those cycles that we were just speaking about. And I was showing you Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are those fixed signs. And that lions that you're talking about with the foreheads facing both directions was Leo, because everything happens when we come back to Leo.
Right.
Right. And
Zep Tepi.
we're going to get to the point where we talk about the Golden Gate and Silver Gate. And of course, the Leo, Aquarius, these fixed signs are open the key. That's the portal that opens the Golden Gate. And Capricorn, Cancer is the Silver Gate, is the key that opens that portal opens the key to the Silver Gate. So this is some exciting stuff we're going to get to that is just mind blowing.
We
But
got to mention also that we still have the running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain.
we do. And also, and we didn't get to this, everything I'm talking about and so much more is embedded within the structure of the site at Saqqara and Hawara and so many of the other sites. They've embedded this ancient knowing about universal cycles within the structures. And I was showing this to someone at Saqqara just a couple of days ago. It's really mind blowing, and we will do a whole podcast on Saqqara, and I will show you how this works, and it is just incredible. And they make it part of the ritual in order that we don't forget these things. Because right now for so many centuries we've seen it just as a ritual, something that the ancient Egyptian kings performed. But in this moment when we're awakening in this cycle, which is one of those earth-changing moments, we're beginning to discern what all of this actually meant. So and because I just love this stuff, this is why I'm presenting it as quickly as I can to everyone. This is one of the most important moments, I think. So it's why we all chose to be born now, to experience this. So yeah, very exciting. And another part of that ceremony, of course, was the raising of the Jed. He says the raising of the Jed was an important part of the Heb Sed ceremony that started during the beginning of the 12th dynasty, or perhaps as early as the 6th. Heck, it could have gone back to pre-dynastic times, to represent Osiris's triumph over Set. Set being chaos, right? Chaos. It's the spirit, light being set in stone, a human physical body. So it's that pure spirit being enfleshed, encased in a body, which becomes chaotic because it wants to escape. Nothing wants to be imprisoned, right? So
we have the word set, like set in stone, or you
right?
let concrete set. Yeah, something hardened can.
Exactly. So yeah, the pillar stood on a shrine, and with the help of the priest, the king would raise a wooden jet column using ropes. Offerings were presented before the pillar and below the ropes. And reenactments of the myth of Osiris and Isis were also performed, and later a poem describing Isis and Nebet's search for Osiris was added to the ceremony, all because they had symbolic significance within the, within the mythology. It tells us our own story. And these are the patterns that, once we discern them, can tell us what's happening next. So yeah, symbolic rituals embedded with the secrets of universal cycles. The annual raising of the Jed that brings us back to center, right? So that we can begin again after a moment of silence into a new cycle. So here we go. You wanted the Taurus? Again, what did we say the energetic womb, which again is the cherubim, what did we say it was? But ninth, right? She is the womb. She is the omega that contains the alpha. She gives birth, right? Ninth emerged from the primordial or primeval waters to create the world, to give birth to our perception of a third dimensional reality. And Hathor also, she's the womb that contains the seed. This is the feminine knowing, right? The feminine life force. And then, of course, Isis and Nephthys, or Nebet, embracing Osiris, representing this magnetic field or shield, the veil, right? That we are born into, that protects us, but also shields us from our enlightenment. And freedom, because it is a prison of sorts, right? It got him totally contained. So yes, it is this Taurus, and this Taurus spins around everything. From Manly P. Hall, it is like an egg or an atmospheric sheath around the physical body. And that atmospheric sheath is who? Shu and Tefnut. We talked about that they are Shu is, he's in that Ka position holding up Nut and standing on Geb. And Tefnut is that magnetism, the space, she's that unseen force of nature that combines with electricity to create life force, right? And the seed in the womb, right? It has to spin. This is the key. What does the pine code tell us? That it has the dual opposing spins within it. And we know it represents the pineal gland, and it contains the seeds of life within symbolism worldwide. On the upper right, we see the staff of Osiris, and you see the two serpents spinning around it with the dual opposing wave spin. And this is it. That's the portal between heaven and earth.
Kundalini energy accessing your pineal gland.
That's it. And I love this quote from the Bible. And so Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." It does not kill you like they say it does. But what did they say about the Ark of the Covenant? If you look at it, you're gone. But they also said that the high priests, after they became the Hanut, right? And they started the separation within the temples. And they said, all the general public, the masses, can only come to the outer courtyard during holidays and festivals. Then only the initiates with a certain amount of learning, could come into different areas of the temple. And only the high priest himself could withstand the power of the Holy of Holies. But that was a lie, right? So we're told we cannot look at the truth, right? But maybe, when we've reached a certain level of enlightenment, we all can look within the heart. You know what I mean?
Or we won't help but see it.
Or we won't help but see it. Exactly. So where is the mercy seat? Here's this beautiful image of the human body with the caduceus, right? And the wings surrounding what? The pineal. the wings of the cherubim, the mercy seat, the power
Right.
of God on earth is within us.
Also, the sphenoid bone,
Yes.
the shape of an owl with the wings that vibrate when you ohm.
Well, exactly. Yep. And again, I know we've covered all this, but boy, it doesn't hurt to repeat it, so that we can literally bring this into our conscious knowing, and not forget it, which it's so easy to do when we're stuck in a 3D world of, so many responsibilities and things we need to attend to. And then this quote from Manly P. Hall, I even posted it this week on social media. She reveals her wisdom only to the tried and initiated few who have earned the right to enter her sacred presence. Tear from the veiled figure of nature its shroud of obscurity and stand face to face with divine reality. He is a great interpreter of the mysteries, the ancient mysteries. And I love that, he's telling us right here that yes, we can stare upon it and we won't die if we have done the work, if we're ready. Any one of us can absolutely, and what better time to be prepared than now, because I think we're about to have this opportunity thrown in our face. So yeah, let's get ourselves to that point where we can withstand the power of the Holy of Holies.
Well, that means overcoming your ego.
That's part of it for sure. It's transmuting your polarity. It's remembering your connectedness to all that is. Everything in our mirror is part of us. So that's everybody we encounter. It's an aspect of yourself that you're creating this 3D mirror that's in front of you, and we can change whatever it is we're experiencing when we change our attitudes and perceptions of it. So, and I love this meme. I think it's fantastic. The kingdom of heaven, and here's our throne, right? The throne of God, and we have moved. Seek us within yourselves. It's always within, and again, the lie is that it's somewhere outside you. Something
And that you need someone between you and this power to interpret it.
Exactly. Somebody's got to channel God for you, because gosh, you can't withstand the power of God, right? Well, hey, if the pharaohs could do it, we can do it, right?
Let's cut out the middlemen.
Let's cut out the middleman. And, that's what Akhenaten, this is really what he was rebelling. And we will do a whole podcast or more just on Akhenaten. And it's so exciting what we can learn from his story. So, yes. And we've pointed out the Sigmatawi many times, and it's this breath and heart fate. It's Shu and Tefnud. It's breathing in and out of form. Or as Manly P. Hall says, we are in the presence of a mysterious agent. And how mysterious is it? It's a great breath of life, in and out, with opportunities presented constantly. In any breath, we can change our perception of reality. What the ancients knew, it's all about the breath, right? The self in a toroidal universe can be both separate and connected with everything else. So you're consider yourself the center looking out, and everything you're looking at is just a mirror, right? It's sort of what I was just saying. So the magnetic field is the womb and the tomb, right? It's the birthing box, right, and the rebirthing box after the death. So the heart is always centered by stillness. That's what we're seeking, and what we're looking at is the moving picture. It's the movie, right, of our virtual reality. We're creating it every step of the way with our thoughts and our heartfelt intentions. And Manly P. Hall says, practically the whole survival of the individual depends upon maintaining the integrity of this flow of energy. See, this is why we need the laws of Ma'at. He says we've got to keep the laws of nature, Ma'at, or the magnetic field fails. right? So this is why the laws were in the Ark of the Covenant, right? The laws of nature, if we don't maintain them, everything falls into isfit, which is the opposite of ma'at. It's chaos. And kind of like where we're at now, folks. This is really cool. This is from Budge. Everybody should be familiar with Budge by now. And I love it because he says in the second version of the story of creation, the god Khepri, that's the Kepler beetle, right? An aspect of the sun, is made to say, I fashioned myself out of the pot, right? The plasma, or he says, for instance, or for example, the divine plasma of which the gods were made, or protoplasm, plasma, right? Electromagnetism. My name is Osiris, the pot of Potu. That's part of the symbolism. Sorry. It is possible that Osiris may be a transcription of Osiris. Of course it is. In another interesting variant, Khepri says, I made my creations therein, for example, Nun or Nunu, by that soul, Ba, which I raised up therein out of inactivity, the pause. It's been written. I'm just not making this stuff up. And this is just one example.
Hey, you're just pointing it out.
Exactly. I really, I have to keep putting these things up. And I have folders and files of so much. But just to show you that I really am not making this up. And this is very cool. This is from Daniel E. Scott, The Interconnected Cosmos. Again, it's long, but bear with me. It is becoming more and more obvious that many major objects in the cosmos are interconnected by long, tenuous filaments of matter in the plasma state. These filaments are sometimes called force-free, field-aligned currents. The entire network is called the intergalactic web. We live in an electrically active plasma universe, an interconnected cosmos. The author's description of his derived model of these plasma structures provides a thoughtful but straightforward explanation of many heretofore unexplained anomalous phenomena. The precise way stars rotate around the centers of spiral galaxies is an important example. It is this complex stellar rotation, inexplicable via Newtonian physics alone, that motivated astronomy's still ongoing 80-year quest for a mysterious force called dark matter. But the interconnecting network of plasma filaments naturally produces this motion. It is not mysterious to anyone who takes the time to understand how it is an electrically caused result. An intelligent, interested layman who reads this work may be shocked to realize the extent of the damage created by the disastrous decades-long waste of money and scientific talent that has occurred because a majority in the scientific power structure still refuse to realize that there is electricity out there. These outmoded claims that electric charges cannot exist in outer space have historically drawn a self-imposed curtain of ignorance over what ought to be a clear, straight, understandable path of scientific progress in our world and our cosmos. This is his book on the left, if you're interested in reading more, but he says it, it's as it's described, the book, he's telling us such, it's so important. And I have to include it here because we're going to talk about these currents as being, we are body electric. The earth is electric. Our perception of reality is electromagnetic. It's Shu and Tepnus. It's the life force between heaven and earth. This is the atmosphere that we're playing on this game board of life.
And electric bodies will necessarily have a discharge.
Yes.
When they get too close.
Exactly. And they spin. This is the thing. They spin. And this is what we're going to talk about.
And they reverse spin.
And they reverse spin. Exactly. And it's so key to everything that we're going to start presenting. And so, understanding this flow is how we learn the secrets of the universe. And I love this image. You can see the kite birds of Isis on the left and Nebhet on the right. Isis always wearing the throne, of course, the seat of power. She is the womb that gives birth. She is the throne. And Nebhet is that precious place, in my opinion. And in between them is the inert Osiris, the land, the people. He's in that moment of silence, right? On the lion bed. And it's not moving. It's just there in containment.
And their wings are down.
And their wings are down. And here we have the Kepler beetle, Kepri, right? Rising, the winged Kepler is rising at the dawn of a new cycle after the moment of silence. And you can see that with the winged disc above. It's that one moment as he starts to emerge from that moment of silence. And on either side, you see the cobras as the dual opposing waves spin, right? Separating out from that winged disc at the center. This is a beautiful expression of that moment of resurrection and renewal after the moment of silence. We'll wrap it up on this one for now, and we'll continue on in the next episode.
Amazing. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will be back very soon. Our website is horusrising.com. And please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, Patricia.
Thanks, Allan.